If your gut is screaming at you, like, I got to go 100 miles this way. I don't have time to break. I don't have time to do this. We got to hit this milestone. This is coming up. And your gut's like, slow down. You should probably at least listen to it to pause and think, what am I missing?
One of my favorite entrepreneurs, his name is Mike Finney. He said to me once, Jess, how am I going to know how good my filet mignon tastes if I don't eat Taco Bell once in a while? I'm so glad you're here. Thanks for stopping by. At the Bold Business Podcast, we are normalizing important conversations. Yes, there are tips. Yes, there are ways to solve problems. More importantly, are going to be what do you need for yourself to be able to solve those problems and make the most of the education, the training, and the programs that you are already using. This is a supplement to that. It can sit on top of it, fuel your soul, fuel your mind, and most importantly, regardless of where you're at on your journey. Maybe you're starting out. Maybe you're ready to scale. Maybe you're going through reinvention. The conversations we are having will help you at each of those stages. So hang around, see what's going on, and I look forward to seeing you engaging with our videos.
Wow.
You are listening to the Bold Business Podcast,
Okay.
where you will hear firsthand experiences about what it really takes to ensure market relevance and your company's future.
Yeah.
I just had a fantastic conversation with Elizabeth Bieniek. She is somebody who's like me. We're both operating from our gut primarily first. We know something and we're curious to figure out who do we need, what do we need, and how do we want to approach it. You might relate. Even if you don't, if you start intellectually or from your heart, you might relate. When we're thinking about innovation, when we're thinking about how we want to change, what is the difference for us between iterating to stay competitive and innovating to create something brand new? It's going to look different for each of our organizations and what we're attempting to do. There are three things that came out of this conversation that set the cornerstone for what Elizabeth and I talk about. We're talking about the fact that diversity of thought matters more than we tend to give it credit for. So, can we slow down and really understand how we think and how another thinks? And then each of those others on our team thinks for that diversity of thought. The second thing is friction and conflict is necessary until you move through that first phase. There is not as much trust. When we need to get to a project with a short timeline, we've got to get to that trust fast. Elizabeth talks about how she's done that with her teams. And then the third thing is a leader sets the tone, and that can be lonely. So, what does that mean? How do you get yourself your own support? How do you make sure that you are empowering your team to do what they want to be doing in the role that they have ascribed for this common outcome? How can you help them achieve that without overwhelming, without instilling fear in them? In the end, we're talking about building self trust, being okay being different with others around us, and the importance of reframing so that we can communicate well. This is Elizabeth Bieniek. Her new book, Cake on Tuesday 25 Lessons to Unlock Corporate Innovation, talks through her unconventional story and shares how we can learn from her experience to bring more innovation and disruption into our worlds. We can say what really needs to be said, or we can say what really needs to be said in a way that's actually received well by people. Have you experienced the difference in that, Elizabeth?
You have to translate things to the audience that you're speaking to. Nobody cares until you make them. You have to say it in a language and currency that they can receive.
And it doesn't matter our age, it doesn't matter our experience, it matters that we're busy.
My 5-year-old responds very highly to food marketing.
Oh, I still do. Our whipped cookies the other day that said, "The simple ingredients, the best cookie ever." I looked on the back when I got home. I should have done it in the grocery store. I should have never brought them home.
I'm a label reader. My eldest daughter has celiacs, so I have to be a label reader. My sourdough is gluten-free sourdough, which is a whole other thing.
That's awesome. So you have that strand or sourdough that makes that possible.
So I made my own starter from sorghum flour. I have my own random flour mix I use now. I've been perfecting it over time. I had to make my own starter to ensure that it was gluten-free and go that route.
We were talking about currency translating, and now we're talking about starter and sourdough, and they're really related. And here's the thing, and this is so great because we have constraints. We have the way people can eat in the house that we're cooking and baking for. And at work, we have the way that we can do this, and this is all we have to work with. Then we have to get that buy-in. We have to come up with crafting that message so that people can come back to it. And then it takes time. We're still talking about sourdough and rising bread, but it takes time sometimes, doesn't it? We can't just throw it out there and go. We just have to let it sit.
It's also positioning it not from a point of lack, it's from a point of abundance. You get artisanal custom-made sourdough. This is amazing and unique. Everything's about marketing.
And we all want to feel abundant. We don't want to
Of
feel
course.
we're lacking. Yeah. Have you had experiences where you're like, why am I feeling lack here? How do I make this shift?
Realizing how much you reframe things, you have to reframe things in your mind of looking at it, just looking at my life up till now, if I put it in 3 paragraphs, and write it from a position of victimhood, of lack. These are all the things that happened to me. This is where I came from. What does that look like? And then reframe it and write the same thing, 3 paragraphs about my life up until now from a point of blessing and prosperity. And they would not look like the same person, but they are the same person. And to me, that's just so telling and powerful of, this is just me and my own life and my own experiences. I could look at it this way or I could look at it that way. And you know what? They were both 100% true. But which one do I want to choose to focus on and identify with?
Do you find that regardless of which one you focus on, you need the other one to really understand who you are and where you're at?
Yin and yang, right and wrong, up and down. You need balance because prosperity and wellness and goodness don't mean anything if you never experience low. So you do have to have that balance.
One of my favorite entrepreneurs, his name is Mike Finney. He said to me once, how am I going to know how good my filet mignon tastes if I don't eat Taco Bell once in a while?
Exactly. I get
I'm
it.
like,
I
yeah,
can do
yeah,
it.
right?
My husband makes the best steak. We go out and order steak just so we can be reminded.
And when it's made with love and you get to choose where it comes from, that comes back to that balance piece. What are my resources and what can I actually put here? In that same vein of things, coming back to, and then you can see I have to choose this or this versus how amazing it is. I have choices, just as one example. I'm like, really? We're going to have that again? Yes, because it's nutritious and it's delicious. Makes everybody in my household fueled in the way that they need, right? I need a lot of protein at my age. My kid needs a lot of protein at his age. My husband just wants to eat a lot right now. That's his goal for the things that he's working on. I think it's big to be able to acknowledge all that. Sometimes, to your point, it's like, oh, we're eating this again. That kind of comes up again. And that happens at work too. Oh, I have to do that again.
Yes. Rather than I get to do that again. Yeah. My 5-year-old and I argue about that. The whole, we're eating that again, but it's good and it's nutritious and it's hot and it's yummy and we all like it and it's here and we have it and we can do it together. It's just reframing. All about reframing.
Do you remember a point you went, reframing will help me in my personal and professional life?
I think there was always some element of subconscious reframing that occurred before, but I don't think I really looked at it as a tool that I could do on purpose till way too late in my career. It's like, I could actually rethink this. In hindsight, there's certain times where I realized, oh, that's what I did in that scenario. I remember having a crappy attitude about it, and then I was like, "All right, we're gonna do this." I was reframing. I just didn't know it at the time. I didn't know the word to give it. I didn't know the voice to give it. I didn't know how to structure it. Changing my thoughts, changing my focus, changing my careabouts. And if I look back, oh yeah, I'm a glass half full kind of person.
Hey, what can we put in the glass? We got
Glass.
we have a glass.
It can hold something.
Yeah.
There's no holes in it.
That's interesting because when you look around, you can see people like, okay. And this is interesting when we make the right team makeup because every team, it's likely if it's not the actual status of being for a person, we will all hit these stages that, oh, I have to be here or why we have to be doing this. I don't understand what this is all about, right? But then there's the optimizer of, cool, we have paper clips and a keyboard and 2 colors of pen? What can we draw to try to
You
solve
build
this
anything.
problem? Exactly. And then there's the even though we don't have it right now, what could we have? And how do we use what we have right now to get there? And then the people of, this is the way we've always done it, right? We got past, future, and everywhere in between.
When you put all those people together, that's when you get these great, interesting, wild, and crazy collaborations because you have all these different perspectives and people are all looking at it from a different angle. That's when you start getting real brainstorming. I like talking about that whole idea of diversity of thought. You need diversity of thought in your group. We focus a lot on diversity of all other kinds, which is also very useful. But a lot of times, the reason you're trying to get diversity of all other kinds is because you're trying to get diversity of thought. Well, people who had different backgrounds, different experiences, different approaches. And so they're going to look at things from a different angle. That's when you get really creative. And I spend a lot of my time living in the world of innovation and specifically corporate innovation. When you want to innovate is just a fancy word for doing things differently, doing things new. So when you want to do that, it really helps to have people who aren't encumbered by all this. This is how we've always done it. This is the way I learned in school. It's great to have people like, I've never seen this problem before. What if we did it this way? What if you turned it sideways? What does it look like? That's when you start getting into real innovation, a really creative approach. So I love it when you get that group together that has all these different backgrounds. That's when it gets exciting.
Share a time with me that you've experienced that and all of the things that go through because while it's exciting, it's not always easy.
Yes. That is true. My entire career up until now. I think pretty much everything I've ever done in any project, we've always been the underdog. I've never been on something that was the flagship product or the top thing. It was usually always the skunk works thing. You can have a few morsels to see if you can make that work here. And I think because of that, it's literally been every experience I could ever think of. I worked in some smaller organizations before. I've worked in different industries. I worked in education. I worked in publishing. I worked in marketing many lives ago. And obviously a lot in technology in corporate America. I think I always gravitated towards those experiences where we're trying to build something new or different, but risk is scary. Usually management and executive sponsors only want to risk so much. The farther out you get with your ideas, the less they want to risk. You have to have these small wins and get creative. For example, if you have only a toothpick and dental floss, you find a way to wrap it around and suspend it to show what you can do. And then you might get a little bit more. Show me what you do with that. And then you do a little bit more. I think that's literally been every experience in my career. But starting small and showing proof points is universal. Should apply that to everything. When you have big resources, you forget that scrappiness because you're not forced to do it based on your funding and time frame. You can start to get a little lazy and sloppy. We'll wait till a year from now, we'll do a big reveal. But if you live and die by the day, you're going to show something cool every day of what you created.
Regardless of the point of view and the diverse people and experiences that we want on teams, we can also go, oh, there is an element or a theme that everybody that chooses to work in these projects, they're a little scrappy. If there's only one way forward, why? And innovation within the known really isn't innovation. And I'm a big believer of calling out, no, that's actually not innovation. No, that's not. What's different here? This and that's hard.
It's like micro and macro evolution to any extent. Like there's value in those small adaptations. You absolutely need to be doing that. But that is not ground shaking innovation that's going to keep you at the top of your game and bring something new to the world. Those are two very different things. And I think a lot of times we do a disservice by lumping them together and just say it's all innovation. Anything that's new or different, that's innovation. I'm like, okay, making a slight tweak on it, yes, that's constant improvement, but that's not necessarily the innovation that you need for long-term sustainability and growth. And I think when we separate those and realize these are two distinct efforts, you might have two distinct types of personalities who are attracted to and good at those types of things, but both are valuable. You need both. They should be complementary.
Share your thoughts and questions in the comments below. I thrive on your feedback and engagement. You're listening to the Bold Business Podcast. I'm your host, Jess Dewell. This is your program for strategizing long-term success while diving deep into what the right work is for your business right now.
You're listening to the Bold Business Podcast, hosted by Jess Dewell, a nationally recognized strategic growth consultant. She works with business owners and executives to integrate just two elements that guide business through the ups and downs of growth. Number one, know what work is necessary. Number two, do all the work possible. Schedule a complimentary consultation to find out more at reddirection.com.
Hey.
I overheard a conversation. And I've heard this conversation at every age. People a little more our age, Elizabeth, where they were a conversation about being a really good team like Batman and Robin. And then they were arguing about who's Batman and who's Robin. That's how I feel about iteration and innovation. Everybody wants the thing they think is the coolest because it happens to be the buzzword, but it's actually not necessarily.
Some of the best innovations are not shiny. There's flashy innovation and then there's real innovation, which is usually a little dirty. People get less excited about it because it's not so sexy. It might not be front page news, but it could be transformational. Great innovation can be hard work coated in grime, which can be unattractive to some people. It's really exciting when you can uncover something. I like the idea of thinking of it as uncovering something. It's kind of like archaeology. You're digging through the dirt. You're gonna find some buried treasure in there, some nugget of truth. It's not just gold nuggets laying on the ground out there. There might be something really cool in there, but you gotta dig through some rock and dirt and mud to get to it. I always gravitate the willingness to do that. That's part of the sense of adventure. I do think people that are really good at innovation are people that just love adventure. And maybe that's why I like to ask people in interviews, what do you like to read? What's your favorite book? What are you reading now? I think I always gravitate towards people that have nice business books or and it's some big fiction novel or old classic that I'm trying to find a nugget of truth and I'm trying to find the adventure. I'm following the story because it gives a little glimpse at the way their brain works, what they get jazzed about and where their heart lies. I'm always reading some sort of epic adventure at the same time. I'm reading some business books.
Talk to me about what you're reading. Now I'm curious.
I'm currently reading Elantris, which was his first published book. I've read a bunch of his other books and wanted to be like, what's the first one? It's interesting. I love seeing how writers evolve. His writing is not quite as polished as some of his later ones. I really like the Stormlight Archive, which is a much later one. I love the character development in those. I just finished Tress of the Emerald Sea, which is another Brandon Sanderson. But I love classics too. I just read Last of the Mohicans. I might have read it when I was younger, but it was so long ago I forgot it.
I've only seen the movie. Okay, I'll add that one to my list because
It's great to read something that, was written so long ago. I've usually worked on global teams, and my favorite parts were always around the holidays, talking about, "What do you do for the holidays? How do you celebrate this season?" Everybody has some holiday they celebrate in the winter. Regardless of religion or geography, everybody celebrates something. I love talking about that and finding the differences and similarities. I think that's what I love about older books as well. If you've ever read War and Peace, I wanted to read that because it always has a stereotype of being the biggest book in the world. So I'm like, all right, I'm going to read it. Uh, but it's about war and peace and it's about people. And there's so much that's relatable in there to today. I really like looking at those similarities and differences and realizing that people are constantly growing and changing and everyone is unique. But at the core, we're all the same.
I am not familiar with Brandon Sanderson, so I'm gonna have to check out because I don't read a lot of fiction. One of my go-tos is actually called Hope for the Flowers. Have you ever heard of the book? It's not a graphic novel, but it has pictures and it is not a kid's book. I found it on the bookshelf when I was a kid. It's 50 years old and it's about transformation and all of the things that come with a little bit of revolution. And one day I was talking about it, and the person I was talking to said, "Let's see if she's still here." So we did, and she was, and her phone number was on the internet. So I called her and we became friends. How that was
Awesome.
isn't that awesome? And
It's very cool.
yeah, so that's one of my go-tos that I will read once in a while. I'm also a big fan of things like The Power of Now and The Four Agreements. I really like both of those. Outside of business books, I like anthropology. I like understanding all the different things, how civilizations have occurred and where they have been. Archaeology in the sense of how do we date things and how do we know that the way we do it is right or not right? And there's a lot of controversy around that. If you want some good conspiracy theories, there's some great works around that.
What's your top one?
My top, I'm actually reading the Encyclopedia of Giants in North America. I really like the Cahokia Indian Mounds, which are on the Illinois side of the Mississippi River outside of St. Louis. all up and down the Mississippi, there are all kinds of mounds that have been made. I always thought the people who lived here before we settled were the ones who made them. The stories collected in this book suggest all of these things were here before us, who we thought lived here and did commerce here and ended up having wars with over settling the land actually were not the people who built these things that are still here. So it's an interesting experience.
This other book I'm reading right now is called For Good and Evil: The History of Taxes on the Civilization of the World or Development of the World, something like that. It's a big book, and I'm slowly making my way through it. But it's talking about every civilization that we have any records on since the dawn of time, the Greeks, the Romans, the Egyptians, everything, and the impact of taxes on how that society grew or ultimately was destroyed, and it's fascinating. I'm a late comer to history, and I've been eating it up lately. I think because history was my least favorite subject in school because I suffered a poor backlog of teachers that were just one after another, was constantly memorizing dates and names. But it was the worst subject until I was in college. I took a class on Western civilization, and my teacher was fantastic. She would just sit down, she's like, "Alright, let me tell you what happened there." And it was like a soap opera. She got into all the things, and this person didn't like that person, and this person didn't like that. She made it come alive. And I was like, "Wow, history is about people. It's interesting. Why did nobody tell me this?" So I'm late to the history game, but now I read a lot of history.
I do too. If you want a really good one that's about history, the history of salt is probably like 15 to 20 years old. It was before my son was born that I read this. And I was like, what am I reading? But it was such a good book on what creates commerce. And salt used to be the currency. So it's the history of how we together geographically, locally.
Runs germs, so let's stick like the whole it's all about commerce
Oh,
and
yeah,
how yeah,
exactly. Isn't that
conquering and
great?
everything else, yeah.
Yeah, and I'm a big stoicism fan. I don't know if I'm good at practicing it, but I sure do read about it and think I bring in a little bit here and there, and I love Ryan Holiday. Anything Ryan Holiday. It's the quickest way to get doses of the Roman Empire, actually, is what I have found.
We could talk about books all day.
Where we have started, if we're willing to recognize and show up with the expectation that there are differences to be found, it opens up a lot of opportunity.
The fact that differences don't make we tend to fall into who's right and who's wrong. I've never been one that sees the world in black and white. I'm very much all the shades of gray. I see everything in between. So when you start getting into these differences, just understand from a point of understanding, like, that's fascinating. This is not better or worse than the other. It's just different. And I think that's what you get into on the business side too, and all these different personality approaches or all these different tests of your best optimal working style or communication style. You start understanding all the nuances of the people around you and the way that you work with them and the way they communicate and realize most of the friction and conflict comes from a point of not understanding the other person. Not necessarily that one is right and one is wrong. It's just you have two valid opinions, but you're communicating in a way that you can't understand. So you're talking past each other. And if you can find a way to solve that communication gap, you could do something pretty amazing together.
How long does it take a team to get past those types of communication gaps?
Depends on how often you can get together in person. When I first formed the team that ultimately became the project team that built what later became WebEx Hologram, it was a small team, around a dozen to 15 people, spread across 9-hour time zones, 4 different countries. Many of them had never met before. And we had a really small runway for the first phase. When I pitched for funding, I wanted this team, this time frame, and I think I can deliver this. I need this budget. And the answer I got back was like, you can have the budget and the team, but the 11-month time frame you gave me to show this, if this is technologically feasible, we need it in 4 months. Like, well, alrighty, let's go, everybody. We had to get to exactly what you were asking about a minute ago. Like, how do you build that camaraderie and how do you gel together as a team? We had to get there really fast. So we immediately did a virtual kickoff. And then as quick as possible, we planned an in-person kickoff. 2.5 days, something like that. It was the first time a lot of these people were meeting together. And we had to get to not just camaraderie, we had to get to trust really quickly. That is so hard to build. It's so hard to build fast. I spent a lot of time planning that offsite with my ops manager, Ashley, and we were just talking about how do we get past everyone trying to posture and position for power? How do we get past all of the BS and just get to, guys, we got to build something in a really short time frame. We don't have time for egos. Let's just get into it. And so we had a short time frame, tight agenda. We started with what we thought was the most important thing we could do. Got everybody in the conference room and said, stand up. You're on this team. Your job. You have to race this drone through this hoop as fast as you can. We spent the first hour doing drone racing inside of a conference room. And it was the best possible icebreaker because it was a team of primarily engineers. So you think about it, it's problem solvers, people that want to like, how do we do this? Also very competitive. So it was great to see people, and we very carefully hand selected these teams. So everybody was on a team with people they didn't know or hadn't worked with before. But you real quick got past it. Like, you're the expert in this, you're a PhD in that, you've got a paper posted on that. Nobody cares. Can you get this little, like, tiny drone through that hoop faster than they can do it? That's all that matters right now. And it was really cool. We have these pictures from that are still on my phone that I love. I just look at them every now and then. It's just it was a great season and a great time and experience. You just see these people diving right into problem solving. Can I tweak my drone? And then you start figuring out who's better at speed and who's better at navigation. All right, how do we do it together? Okay, you real quick get through this part and then hand it to that person. They can navigate. You get to this team building so fast. And I think that's a lot of what it is. How do you get to camaraderie and building trust? Is you have to, as quickly as possible, tear down these facades and these masks that we're all fronting and just get to, we are here for a common goal. And the only thing that matters is how can we help each other to achieve that goal? It's not this positioning. Nobody cares about title. Nobody cares about seniority and years of experience. We are all trying to do our part to get to this goal. Whatever you can do to achieve that is gonna help whatever project you're on move forward, and that's a lot of what I talk about in Cake on Tuesday is what I learned through that process. Some things worked, some things didn't, and some things we figured out the hard way, but anything you can do to help build up camaraderie, that's amazing.
So that trust and camaraderie, that's what really makes a team competitive, like, externally.
I think so because you have to go, I'm sure you've heard this before about people in armed forces, you're fighting for the people next to you. You have to build that team feeling. Like, you are all moving towards a common goal, but you are arm in arm with the person next to you. And that factored into our hiring process, everything we were doing in positioning, structuring teams. I was very clear anytime we brought somebody new on, we don't have time for egos. This is a no ego team. So it's whatever needs to be done at the moment to get the job done. If you think you are at a point in your career where you are above sitting on the floor stripping wires, this is not the team for you. Sometimes you have to run to Home Depot, mail that package at FedEx, roll up your sleeves and futz around with nuts and bolts. It's whatever needs to be done in the moment. Being careful and making sure that we had people who are okay with that attitude right from the get-go creates this inertia and breeds the team so that everybody else sees that alert jumping and doing like, wow, he's got more degrees than I do. And he's just jumping in and doing, I can do that too. And it starts feeding itself and it becomes this thing. And then you add somebody new to it and they're like, wow, this is cool. This is different. And they just get sucked into that culture and it becomes their culture too.
So a team dynamic can be influential to integrating somebody quickly, and it can benefit from that new addition at the same time. Finding different ways of healthy conflict. Oh, look, there's this new person. Oh, there's somebody we haven't worked with before. Oh, there's going to be some dissonance here. That's healthy because it keeps us all here and reminds us, what are we doing? No egos are welcome here.
Yes. But you have to also carefully foster that. And I talk a lot about leadership of, as a leader, you have to set the tone. This is something I think a lot of times there's not to poo on a bunch of leadership books out there, but I think there's a lot of things to talk about. Your team should do this rather than you should change your approach and you should model it first. You can't create a culture that you yourself don't fully live because people only listen so far to what you say. You have to put it into action. So if you want this team that has no egos, you can't have an ego. You you want this team who wants to throw out ideas and be okay with other people building on their ideas. If you throw out a thought and somebody tells you exactly why it's not gonna work and throws out a different one, you have to be okay with that. If you model that to your team as a leader, they'll very quickly get on board like, "All right, this is the space we've created. They're doing it. It must be okay. I can do it too." But if you don't do it and you just say it, that has the opposite effect. Translates, okay, so the boss is saying this, so when they're around, I gotta act like this, but they don't actually mean it, so I've gotta play these manipulation games, that will kill your culture like that.
And the teams will never create commonality, which means everything will be missed. Have you ever had to catch yourself? Whoops, I'm not actually living what I want. How do I make a change?
We're all screw up, all make mistakes.
Both hands.
Yeah, 100%. I think part of it too is being the willingness to be vulnerable as a leader. I took a long time in my career. I feel like I learned lessons really late. I spent a lot of my younger career, I would say, compartmentalizing. I'm a natural compartmentalizer. My husband will joke, "You didn't see that pile of laundry. You literally had to step over it." Yeah. I'm like, "Yeah, but I was thinking about something else." No, I physically did not see it because I'm thinking about this other thing and there's no laundry in the thing I'm thinking about. So why would I see it? So compartmentally comes natural to me. And I think I spent a lot of my early career thinking my success will come from compartmentalizing. When I'm at work, I'm fully at work. I never think about anything personal. And when I'm outside work, I keep my life separate. I don't talk about personal things at work. It's just, we're here for just work. And it was later in my life and learning a few things and having kids is a big thing. Realizing that there's no such thing as separating your personal and your work life. You get to work and like, "Oh, there's spit up on my pants." You just realize these worlds collide. Maybe my 3-month-old is not plotting this, but it seems every time I have a big presentation, they're up all night. Worlds collide, and you don't have the luxury of compartmentalizing as easily. Later in my career, I realized these worlds are not separate. And that's important when I'm interfacing with my people too. Their world's not separate. If they got in a fight or their kid is sick or something else is going on in their life, it will impact them. Maybe they're going to have an off day or need a little bit more grace. It's important to realize that we're all people. We're all going to screw up. You're going to have on days and off days. Realizing I am a motivation junkie. I respond to certain kinds of motivation very positively and I'll just go. Other things can be very draining. So I have to be mindful. I'm also an introvert and I spent a large part of my career in very extroverted functions, speaking, leading, partnerships, relationships. I'm always interfacing with people, usually presenting in some facet. I need to find that balance of time where I can think and plan and calm things down. You do have to hack your life and find what works and what doesn't. Some of it's trial and error. That comes with time, age, and experience. Later in my career, I found I have to balance things. I can only do so many back to back presentations or talks, pitches, or offsites. And then I need to supplement that with a certain amount of time that's brainstorming or just thinking, writing, going through, are we prioritizing things correctly? And I need nobody around. You get better at those with yourself. And I think as you get better with yourself, you get better with how to apply that to your team too.
I'm your host, Jess Dewell, and we're getting down to business on the Bold Business Podcast. This is where we're tackling the challenges that matter most to you with actionable and achievable advice to get real results that lead to your success. Don't forget, press that bell icon so you never miss a program. And it's time to subscribe as well.
Focused on growth? Listen to more programs like this which support the challenges and opportunities you are working with right now.
Come on.
Search Bold Business Podcast for the key terms at reddirection.com or your preferred podcast listening app.
I think about it in relationship to energy versus behavior or actions, only because I know if my heart is full, my brain isn't as on. And if my brain is full, I discern less well, and my gut actually says, hey, there's probably more here, but I'm a little timid today. I'm a big risk taker. So I live in the how much risk can I take? Do we have enough to go? Or even if we don't, cool, at least I'm recognizing we don't have what we need.
It'll happen.
Yeah, that's exactly that. My problem, my life. If I'm full someplace else, if I have heartache because of something, or if I have a brain full of things that need to be done, I can't discern all of the things that there are to discern. I just learned that in the last few years with all of the success and failure that I have had over time. How cool would it have been to know that I have this on my mind or on my heart? So it's going to impact my ability to think here or show up for something else. How much can I actually be there to help remove the obstacles of the people that I am trying to remove the obstacles for so they can be their best?
Oh, the things we could have told our younger selves. Somebody asked me who my audience for Kickin' Tuesday is. "Who'd you write this book for?" I'm like, "Me, 20 years ago."
Yeah.
Wish I had this.
I was gonna say this is a really great thing because my past self leaves me $5 and $10 in my pockets. I don't get good advice from my past self. Could I go back? Maybe I could impart that too. So, have you ever found a time where you were all of this work and effort to create dynamic teams that move fast, that are truly innovative and will let their egos aside to get to this common goal? Have you ever found yourself lonely in that?
Yes. I think leadership can be lonely because by the nature of it, you have to be out front. Specifically leading in innovation, you're helping to find the way through. There are times where you purposefully cannot clue your team into everything that's going on because protecting your team and shielding them from the noise is necessary. Biggest roles of leadership is enabling and empowering your team to do what they are meant to do. So you're not trying to encumber them with all the hassles of leadership. Are we going to get that funding? Are we going to make that deadline? Is this deal going to come through? They don't need to know that. A lot of times you're trying to shield them from that in many ways, like parenting. My kids can only handle so much information. We just had a snowstorm here in Austin and we had to prepare for that because Austin doesn't really do snow. So there's things my husband and I are doing about, do we have the generator? Do we have some extra propane? Do we have the firewood? Do we have extra water in case we lose this? My kids will see some of that preparation. They'll ask, why are you doing that? And so I might explain, all right, we're having a snowstorm and we don't really have the structure for that. When it's snow on the ground, we can't drive somewhere to get something for maybe a day or two, and we might lose power and might get cold. We're just doing some extra things to be careful. My kids don't want me to say the generator wasn't working and we're not sure of this and we need a new cable. They don't need to have those stresses because their main job is to go out and play in the snow because it never happens in Austin. I don't want them encumbered by these other things. And the same way with a team, you hire great people who are better than you at what they do, and you want to enable them to do that. So you don't hire somebody who's awesome at skill X and then say, "Here, I also worry about skill Y and all these other things. Let me deal with those. You focus on skill X. I've got these other things covered. If you need something, let me know. If something changes, I'll let you know. But in the meantime, you've got your path. I've got my path. We're good." So protecting them from that, I think, is really important. And that can be lonely because there's only so many people you can share those things with.
I wish my past self knew that was actually something that I learned late. In my work, I end up working with founders and executive teams that have never experienced that before, that they try and share too much, and that's hard to come back from. You really have to trust yourself to go, whoops, that was a little too much.
Sharing is a problem.
Sharing is a problem because we want everybody to feel empowered and we forget just TMI doesn't, empowerment doesn't include.
Yeah, it's easy to wrap your head around it when you're talking about something like parenting and your kids and realize, okay, my child doesn't have the life exposure to understand that this is just a risk and something you want to plan for. In them, it's just going to create fear. It's harder in a work environment because we're all grown adults. We all have lives and pay mortgages and have life experience. So realizing from their vantage point, they don't need that extra fear. And they might not be able to see all the other moving parts that you have. They might not get all the updates. Are you just throwing fear on them? Is the one time data dump of information. And now you've created this fear that's going to grow and distract them without a good resolution. Yeah, that's not a healthy environment.
So we have to trust ourselves to keep our mouths closed and that we know what we're doing and we chose that leadership role.
Now, the flip side of that is you should have a good mentor cabinet. You should have people outside of your job function that you can dump on. It really helps if they are nowhere near your reporting chain, nowhere near your organization, possibly nowhere near your industry. Sometimes it helps to have an outlet to vent. Sometimes that's your spouse, sometimes that's someone in a completely different space, sometimes it's somebody in a similar role in a totally different industry, and you can just share back and forth. Could be great idea sharing, could just be getting something off your chest. I also talk about this idea of huckleberries, going back to books. Huckleberry Finn is where that term comes from, but if you trace it back, it goes to Arthurian legend, where a knight used to drape a huckleberry garland over their lance as a symbol of allegiance to a lord or lady. The whole concept was, I will fight for you. I will go into the fire with you. I love that idea of finding your huckleberry. I mentioned mine earlier, who was Ashley, my ops manager, who helped me plan the drone racing. She was my huckleberry through thick and thin through this project. She was the one person I didn't share all of my fears and concerns with her because she was my employee, but she was my partner in crime that would go into these unknowns with me. I compared her a lot to Sam in The Lord of the Rings. She was my Sam. She was the one that went with me into everything. I think it's important to find that 1 or 2 people in your environment, in your team, who can be your huckleberry. It might be a different person for different scenarios. It might be my chief of staff, my admin, or my ops manager. They all have different roles. It could be different for different things, but you need that person that's gonna go with you into the fray and help you with that battle, because if you're doing everything alone, that's also a problem. You need to make sure that you have help and support.
Yes, that's the only way to continue to trust, I think. We erode our own trust if we don't have those outlets. You're talking about how do we continue to make sure that we're letting go, but we're also having an opportunity to grow and sift through things so that we can reflect and whatever we want to take forward to be able to take forward.
And sometimes they have to hold you accountable too. One time where Ashley messaged me and said, "Go get yourself a coffee, take a break." And she texted me a picture so I know you actually did it. I sent her like, "I'm taking a break."
That's good.
Sometimes you need that.
We do need that. And that external accountability builds our self trust. So, this is my question then. We have to be able to listen to ourselves too. What makes it bold to listen to ourselves as we keep taking that next step?
That's a big one because listening to yourself means you have to value your own opinion. When you start getting that, you start getting into imposter syndrome and self doubt. Am I the right person? Should people be listening to me? When going gets rough, it can be really hard. But I do firmly believe in that gut feeling, that gut check. I really like Malcolm Gladwell's book, Blink, because it validates that whole idea of gut reaction and saying there's science behind that. There's a reason why you should listen to your gut. And I've always been somebody that really relies on my gut, and there's been times in my career where someone's asked, "What is your proof for that?" I'm like, "I don't have proof. It's just a really strong gut feeling." And I've had cases where a leader is, "I need more than that. I need proof." Okay, I don't have it. And there's been other scenarios where a leader saying, "Your gut's been right in the past. I'll let you go out on a ledge on this one." And when it comes through, it's great to be able to say, "Oh, my gut was right on that." And it gives you some confidence to realize, maybe I should listen to that inner voice. But like I said, I really like Malcolm Gladwell's Blink because I did feel like he unpacked that a bit and went deep on it of it's not just this random feeling and emotion of the day. There's usually a scientific response to that, and you don't realize that your subconscious is processing all these other things and information that maybe you're too busy or stressed to realize, but you are actually making a computation in your brain and a good guess based on inference from all these pieces of information that you're bringing together, even if you don't realize you're doing it. So there is value in your gut. So I think getting comfortable with listening to that and realizing, if nothing else, it should be a pause. If your gut is screaming at you, slow down, you should probably at least listen to it to pause and think, what am I missing? Take that little step back, even if it's a mini pause. What am I missing? What else could be going on here? Let me ask for some advice here. Let me check my mentor cabinet. Let me just pause and look at the industry. Is there something going on? Because it's rare that your gut is going to start screaming if there's not something that you're missing that you should be mindful of.
Every single time I have a conversation, I take away something that I want to share with 25 people. I know when you're listening to this podcast, you're also listening for that and will have something that you want to share. In the comments, I would like for you to engage with us. What is that thing that you want to tell 25 people from this program? Here's why it's important. It's important because, yeah, there are going to be how-tos. Yes, there are going to be steps. Yes, you're going to be like, oh, I wish I wrote that down. I wish I wasn't doing this and I could actually take action on that right now. But guess what? You're not. So engage right now, because that one thing you want to share with others will be the thing that you can figure out how to incorporate in your business, in your workflow, in your style tomorrow.
Jess hosts the Bold Business Podcast to provide insights for building a resilient, profitable business by deeply understanding your growth strategy, ensuring market relevance, and your company's future. It is bold to deeply understand your growth strategy with your host, Jess Dewell. Get more information about how to drive solutions and reset your growth mindset at reddirection.com. Thank you for joining us, and special thanks to our post-production team at The Scott Treatment.